We are ready to go.
Good afternoon. My name is Greg Poole. I'm superintendent at Barbers Hill ISD, and I chair the Standing Committee on Athletics. These are unusual times, and we are proud to be able to use this avenue to continue to do the good works that the UIL always has. It is a challenge, but we're going to rise to the occasion, and we look forward to great discussion and doing what's right for kids in the state of Texas. I want to introduce the following people who are on this committee. Jim Waller is retiring, but he's still on the committee. Evidently, he's on a lake somewhere fishing. Curtis Rhodes is here. James Brewer. Yeah, if you'll just wave. Robin Ryan, Cody Morey, Susan Bond, Richard Kilgore. And before I turn the floor over, or the mic over to Susan Elza, I want to allow our august chairman, director, Charles Brydup, to say a few words. And I want to say this before he gets it, because I've served on a few committees already during this pandemic with him. And we could not be more fortunate to have a leader with the experience and the background and the breadth of knowledge that Charles has to shepherd us through. Charles and I both love history, and we're in historic times. I'm not overly excited at times about these historic events because of the challenge they pose. But truly, we've relinquished some authority that we needed to Charles in these unprecedented times. And I just want to say how proud I am to have Charles as our leader. And it truly is, could not be a more needed time to have seasoned, successful leaders as what we're going through right now. So thank you, Charles, and I'll turn the floor over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Poole, for the kind words and for your continued support of UIL activities. I'm going to save most of my remarks for tomorrow for the full council. And just wanted to say just for a minute, thanks to this committee, the athletic committee, who has the most on its docket. You have a lot of items to take care of today, and we appreciate your time and your attention to this. We don't like doing Zoom calls because we like to shake your hand and see you face to face and discuss these topics in more detail. But this is where we are, and this is what we do. And you're adjusting back at your school districts and doing much more than we're doing here, I can assure you. But you know how important this is to our constituents, our student athletes, our coaches, our parents, and administrators in every district in Texas. And we take all of this seriously. I've shared this before. Our staff had a great plan to finish out the spring of 2020 with our state basketball tournament, of course, our state soccer tournament, and then right on down the line, finishing with baseball in the middle of June. But it didn't happen for us, and neither did it happen for you. And we hate it for all those seniors, and I've said that before. But I want to say thanks to our staff for getting that plan together. That took a lot of work. A lot of pride goes into putting together a plan for an event. Whether you're the baseball director or the softball director, or you're running the state track meet like Brian does, it takes a lot of effort. And then when you see that, the date coming up for that event, and you see it not going to be able to happen, that just tugs at your heart. And I know every one of our staff have had those kind of feelings. I want to say thanks to Dr. Susan Elza, first of all, her great team. I'm going to let her introduce them in a minute. Her great team have been fantastic all the way through. And they have worked, I will tell you, most of them will say to you that they worked harder away from the office than they have at the office. And they work extremely hard at the office. So I'm appreciative of all of them, their dedication, for their interest in what's best for young people, and for doing the right thing every day. So Dr. Elza, my hat's off to you for the work that you've done, the numerous plans that you put together to get us back on track. The current things that we're using for our strength and conditioning for the summer, I think, has been most appreciated by those that I've talked to. And I have to say this, I don't see him on the screen, but I know he's here. Dr. Harrison is the supervisor of all of our event-driven activities, academics, music, and athletics. And he's worked hand in hand with this group, developing plans for how we're moving forward. Our hope is that we can start on time, stay on schedule, with full set of fans in the stands. That's what we hope for. We'll have to wait, as you said, based on what we'll be given from above, but we want to move forward, and we're ready. This is an eager staff, and I'll tell you, you have to say whoa before you say have to giddy up with them. And they are just great people. Glad to work with them. And I'll turn it back over to you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you for those comments, and I very much will echo, even during the state basketball tournament. And I know we've got over 160 listening, so I want to remind everyone, we certainly have, this is a public meeting, but I know in talking to Charles, it is only with the absolute most regret that we cancel state championships. And we've mentioned before in a previous meeting, we've never canceled state championships, even during the Spanish flu, World War II, World War I. And so it was with heavy heart. And I can promise you, Charles is a coach that coached in a state championship. I played in one, and we both know the life-changing events they can be. And so just anyone listening know those decisions are made as an absolute last resort. The fact that we even attempted basketball is a testament that we were going to do everything we could to have it and would only cancel when there was no other resort. So I do want to testify that that was Charles's motive and the UIL's desire, and I'm sure will continue to be that way. Now I will turn the microphone over to Susan Elson.
Thank you, Dr. Poole. Thank you to our athletic committee. It's like I said, when I sent y'all that email, I wish we were seeing you in person, but this will have to do for now. I know you took time out of your busy schedules to come to this meeting, and we do have a long agenda, but we will soldier through it. I want to say, number one, introduce our staff. Jessica Walker is one of our event coordinators. She really heads up everything and is running this meeting. Our associate athletic director, Brian Polk, assistant athletic directors, Brandy Belk, AJ Martinez, and Joseph Garman. Dr. Braddock said it. I mean, they're a great team and a great staff, and they have a coach's heart, and they care about, trying to get back to much normalcy as we can. We did have a lot of plans, and they were the ones that created those. And, we were just as disappointed as anybody, but, we're focusing forward. And I can't say enough good things about Dr. Braddock and Dr. Harrison. And, the one thing that, you can't get better unless you have great leaders in front of you. And they've led very strong throughout this, and they've led with hope and not fear. And there's no doubt that we'll be back. So, with all that being said, it just takes a group to get there, and it absolutely takes the support of our legislative council. So thank you for all you do for UIL and for the kids of the state.
All right. And let's don't forget Susan Dowdery. I don't know that we mentioned her name, but we know who the real power is in Charles's office. And so thank you, Susan, for all that you do. And so now at this time, Susan, help me out here because I'm looking for my sheets. So we are
old business. We're heading into our.
Yeah, I'm looking for the script. So let me just turn the floor over to you for old business.
Okay.
We need to take a motion on the minutes.
Oh, there you go.
The agenda.
Yeah, I can't.
Apologies.
I'm looking for that script. That's the one I was looking for earlier, and I'm sure it's here somewhere. I also want to draw the board's attention to the motions. We always do that. I believe you have those motions, and certainly I think we've all done this enough to know what type of motions are permissible, but it is in our packet. But I hope that all of you have had time to peruse the minutes from the previous meeting, and if indeed you have, I would entertain a motion at this time.
Move to approve the minutes.
Second.
Okay, I believe I've got Robin Ryan as a motion and Curtis Rhodes as a second. Is there any discussion on that motion or second? And hearing none, let's just throw your hand in front of your face if it's a yes. All in favor of approving the minutes, please indicate as such. It appears that that is unanimous for whoever's keeping count. So thank you for keeping us in line on this first ever Zoom athletic committee meeting. We have now approved the minutes, and I will turn it over to you, Susan, to talk about old business.
Okay. Under item F, old business, we had our staff study reports, and item A and B were two items that are similar and related. Item A being adjust the track and field. We were studying adjusting track and field wheelchair division guidelines. And these guidelines had to do with, there's some editorial things that we were able to change. within our guidelines for qualifying for the 400, 100, and the seated wheelchair throw. But there were some qualifying structures, requests that we're just not quite ready to add. I just want to remind the committee that, these are 3 events that we've added, and we don't fully have those events added, but for their qualifying structure, any of the 8 meets throughout the year will qualify them for state, because we take the top times and the top throws. The request was to have them qualify by attending both the district and the regional meet. And we, just visiting with coaches and things like that, with these athletes, they said it would be more of a hardship. It was a little easier for them to be able just to attend one and record a throw. So at this point in time, we think it's a great idea, but we are going to take no action on this item. I'm going to go ahead and talk about item B, because it's related to track and field as well. And this one has come before us before, and we keep evaluating where we're at. But with our current wheelchair events, with the 100, 400, and seated throw, we do not have complete participation in both the boys and the girls. So at this time, we don't see that it's needed to add another event, but we will continue to evaluate that as well and take no action. Dr. Poole?
Yeah, so your recommendation is no action. And let me deviate a little bit. Let me read the following, if I could back up. I'm not sure if I was meant to read this, but I want to be redundant just in case. Certainly, this meeting is being held in accordance with the waiver to certain provisions of the Texas Open Meetings Act issued by Governor Greg Abbott on March 16th, 2020. And in the interest of avoiding large gatherings and promoting social distancing during this pandemic, one or more members may participate by teleconference or video conference. And then it indicates that there is no physical location for this meeting to ensure social distancing COVID-19, but the live stream is available and it gives where it's available, but I'm certainly sure anyone can find that if they so desire. So I wasn't sure if I was supposed to read that again for this meeting or we just read that for the previous, but it's always better to be redundant. Now, let's go back to, there's no action required. Is there any discussion by the board on Mrs. Elza's recommendation, Dr. Elza's recommendation? Hearing none, Susan, let's continue.
Item C from old business is home field advantage for district champions in team sports. And as many of y'all know, we've discussed this since we've added the home field advantage in 5A and 6A football. The discussion has been, do we want to add this to the other sports? And this was proposed by the TGCA back in the fall. And, talking to all of our groups, TGCA, the High School Coaches Association, the ADs Association, basketball, the concern has been, and I didn't name them all, by the way, but with everyone, the concern has been, if you have home field advantage, what's it going to do if your gym only seats on one side, or your softball field doesn't have fences, or your baseball field doesn't have lights? And you can see where all the challenges come in. So we weren't getting an overwhelming consensus, but what we do want to remind everyone is that, home field advantage, is between 2 corresponding districts. When they meet up in district play. And so they're in by district play. So there's nothing that keeps school districts right now having that agreement between the 2 corresponding districts that they're going to have a home field advantage with their district champions. So at this time, we will take no action on this item. But we do want to reinforce the fact that schools can do this, with the 2 corresponding districts if agreement is met. So
Charles, I know, had a lot of comments on this previously. This has been a much discussed topic. Is there any comment from any board member before we continue on this topic? So hearing none, my view of it is you could make a case either way. Even if there's advantages with the seating, that's a home field advantage. But I think this one absolutely is, in my mind, dependent upon what the coaches seek and what the professional organizations seek. And I appreciate, Susan, that you and your staff really sought input, because this is, to me, the classic case of we're here to respond to what they think is most fair. And so at this time, we'll continue to keep it with just the one sport, and we'll continue with old business.
Item D, this was a proposal that came to us in October, and it has to do with, and y'all are going to see something similar to this in new business, but our rules in junior high / middle school athletics don't allow for competitions to start before the end of the school day. And with the different schedules, traditionally schools used to all get out at 3:30 or 3 o'clock or whatever it may have been, but that's just changed drastically with busing schedules over time. And so some schools aren't, releasing it as late as 4:30. And, with some of the limitations we've had, they've asked us to review our start times for junior highs / middle school. So with that being said, we need a little bit more time to study this and obtain a little bit more feedback. So we are going to request to continue to study this item.
So, and I've got my apologies, it may be on my end, but what I'm looking at is the agenda. And so is it possible, because it's difficult for me to see if somebody does want to make a motion, I suppose they could say something, but so whoever's running it, if it's on y'all's end, if I could view the board, it would be helpful. But still, board members, because I'm not viewing you, please speak up, and I'll try to give more time, because I've done enough of these to know they don't encourage participation, and that is certainly not what we want. I mean, we're being forced into this method. So I'll do a better job of slowing down. So if I'm not able to see the folks, please, board members, I'll give more time and speak up if you have comments. But I think what I heard Susan say in relation to this is that it has perhaps some merit, but we need more time. And with that, are there any comments from other board members? Hearing none, Susan will continue with old business.
Okay. Item E, just to give a brief overview, this is create a separate 1A conference in volleyball, softball, and baseball. And as a reminder to the committee, in 1A, and Cody, I know you know this, in 1A, we combine the 1A softball, volleyball, and baseball with the 2As during district play, and then they advance in their own brackets once you get to postseason. And for a number of reasons, the 1A folks don't love it, and the 2A folks don't love it. But that's how we're able to have enough teams to participate. So they've asked us to create a separate conference in 1A for district in volleyball, softball, and baseball. And based on the numbers, and we've got to, obviously we're going to have to get our numbers again for next year as we obtain those in January. But we're going to continue to study this item. They're close. That's the best thing I could say about it, but it's not really anything that we can take action on.
I thought I heard somebody. So again, some interest, not ready to take action. And I was able to move my screen around a little bit. Now I see roads. I'm not sure if that's better or not, but anyway, any comments by any board members on this topic? Hearing none. Susan, please continue with old business.
Dr. Poole, let's try it. I figure everybody has their agenda in front of them, so we can try the full screen, Jessica, if you want to show the full committee, just so it's not so cumbersome for him to see everybody. There we go.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay.
I mean, plus we got to make sure nobody's sleeping, right? So
yeah. When we get into some of the other agenda items, we may need to show, especially on the written proposals. But
no, I understand. And it just helps, Jessica, if you're the one, even though people can speak from doing these, I know it's nothing worse than starting to talk over each other. And then it becomes almost like you can't keep from it happening. So yeah, as we can, we'll go to full screen. Okay. Thank you very much, Jessica and Susan. Now let's continue with old business.
Okay, and just these two items I'm just reporting on. They do not need any action. There may be some discussion on them. So in our October meeting, this committee supported and moved forward and was ultimately approved by council a $5 increase for the 2020-21 season to the team sports of 1204. And that will go in effect next year. You charged the Sports Officials Committee, referred to the Sports Officials Committee for them to consider an increase for the officials in the 2021-22 school year, another $5 increase. We did have a sports officials committee meeting, but we determined that we were not going to discuss this item until September. So we'll be reporting back on this in October. The second item, there were a number of things that came out of written proposals last time with that went to the football rules committee, things from targeting to timeouts and just different things of that nature. And the football rules committee, all of those that were proposed were rejected by the football rules committee. Dr. Poole?
All right, so just a quick to see if there's any comments on either of the two topics that Susan updated us on. And I will make a comment while we're waiting. It's been intriguing. We've not ever gone through a pandemic. From our perspective in regards to the officials fee, that was much discussion. I think those that have been on the board know that perhaps has had as much discussion as any topic we've recently had. In trying to get to some point that it seemed as if everyone agreed it was needed. It's just how much and when. But I can only speak to Barbara Seal, and I would assume it's typical with others. We actually saved money, millions, during the pandemic because of not paying for transportation, not paying for tutorials. Now we fed 20,000 meals, and I'm sure there's others that have other circumstances. But I just propose from our perspective. I don't have a concern that because of the pandemic, maybe we don't do the officials increase, because actually we made money in a sense. Now, I know a lot of this is dependent upon fear of the future and whether, as I heard Charles say, we hope to have competition and fans in the stands. And certainly that would be a reassuring thing to ADs who have to pay that budget. So anyway, that's just my thought. Any other comments on those two before we move to new business? Motion with a hand if you do. And I do want to say before we move to new business, that I do want to clarify, we're going to be talking about written proposals from the public. And certainly, it's not ideal that we have people streaming, but I want to assure people, and Charles and I have talked, and Susan, we want to do everything we can to listen, to hear, to even go slower than normal. We've consolidated some of these. I know that staff has, because we've got a lot of proposals, but we will be even more diligent, or perhaps more cautious to act on some things because of the very nature of how we're doing this and the inability to hear some public comment. So we're being as sensitive as we can for those that are listening. And I want to turn it back over to Susan for new business.
So we talked about, I emailed y'all. This is probably one of the longest agendas that we've had since, I have been at UIL, and we have 152 proposals, in effort to make it a little bit more efficient. We have grouped these, but by no means, and I'm saying this to the public as much as I'm saying it to the committee, we're not, we take these proposals very seriously. You kind of have to pivot whenever you're given a second set of circumstances, and anybody that maybe their proposal is not accepted today, we highly encourage you to come. Hopefully we'll be in person in our October meeting and propose in person. We know that there is a huge difference between sending something in writing and sending something in, or being able to be in person and present it to the full council. With that being said, we will proceed through our new business agenda. Again, as I said, and anybody that needs me to slow it down or take it in pieces, I'll be glad to. If we need to put these up on the screen, I'm kind of looking at Dr. Braddock and Dr. Harrison. Would y'all like us to, do you think we need to go ahead and put the written proposals up on the screen during this segment of the meeting? Yeah. All right, so Jessica is going to display these proposals. Just, due to sheer volume, I won't, obviously be announcing every person's name that proposed something, but I am going to touch on the topic. So under new business, item A through E, all were related to football rules. Item A being the touchback rule. They want to change that. Item B, prohibiting pushing a ball carrier forward. Item C, a mandate on timeouts due to heat. Item D would be another suggestion to alter the targeting penalty. And item E is to alter the punt return, kick return. And as many of y'all know, we get these quite a bit. And what we do is we recommend that we refer these to the Football Rules Committee.
So the recommendation on all of these rules is to forward them to the Rules Committee. Do I hear, and please speak if you do, any comments on these? I will make this comment. I love history, and it's so interesting to me, the one about pushing the ball carrier forward. Those that know football know way back there, you even had handles on the britches because that was part of the game. And I think this is probably talking about quarterback sneaks, because it has now become common that a fullback or somebody will just come and hit their own player and push him forward. So it's interesting to see how rules come in circles. And so, but yes, it sounds as if the committee agrees, Susan, to forward these to the football committee, and please continue with new business.
Okay, items F through H, another group of written proposals that are all in the same category for basketball. What differs in these is that these would actually have to be, we follow the National Federation of High School Sports basketball rules, and these would all have to be rule adjustments at that level and not at the UIL level. One of these I did want to update on, a proposal to add the shot clock to basketball. We just finished our third year of a shot clock experiment, and we had a relatively small number of schools participate in that in a preseason tournament. We share that data with the National Federation. They actually entertained this as a rule change for this upcoming year for 2021, and it was not approved. The other two items is a topic among National Federation, but it has not been a rule change yet. Item G, a proposal to alter the bonus rules in basketball, and item H, a proposal to implement a charge circle in basketball. Those have both been topics, but not been moved upon by National Federation. So at this time, we would recommend no action.
I would be remiss if I didn't ask the basketball coach, Brydup, if he had any comments on these basketball rules.
No, it doesn't seem to be a lot of interest. There are some, and it's keen with those that want it, but for the most part, our coaches have said no to the shot clock.
And just one last question. We may have asked this before. Is it common in other states for high school sports to have or not have the shot clock?
It is uncommon. There are 8 states that utilize it now. They're in violation of the National Federation rule, but they're participating anyway with that because they like it and it works for them. The other states like Texas are not doing that.
Thank you for that background, and committee. You heard the recommendation, but I want to throw it out to you. If there's any comments to be made, that there doesn't seem to be some inertia to change the rule regarding the shot clock or any of these other basketball rules. Are there any comments from the committee before we continue?
Dr. Poole, this is Richard Kilgore. I would just say that the expense of the shot clock probably adds to that as well, as people not looking as to getting that, because that would be, especially for us smaller schools, would be an expensive endeavor.
Thank you for that comment. And always, safety and fiscal implications are always chief concerns for us. And I appreciate that. And it changes the game strategically. I mean, it's not, it actually, for good or bad, it has an impact on how the game is played. Anyone else have comments about the basketball rules that are not being acted upon at this time? Hearing none, Susan, would you please continue with new business?
Okay, item I is a proposal to reduce the hurdle spacing distances for middle school. This is a rather long proposal, and I know Brian Polk and myself have both talked to this coach, and he is very passionate about this, and we've explained this to him, and we just want to make sure we explain to everybody on this committee. When it comes to middle school, those middle school districts in track have a lot more flexibility than obviously a high school district does, and if he can reach consensus with his middle school district or anyone that wants to reduce this hurdle spacing, then they are able to do so at the middle school level. So we would recommend no action.
Any other comments on changing hurdle spacing just for middle school and the staff's recommendation to not act on it? Hearing none, and I do think that's a wise tact. Continue, please, Von Elza.
Okay. Item J, a proposal to allow junior high track meets to start before the end of the school day. This piggybacks on some of the old business that we are, continuing to study, and it also piggybacks on a rule change that we just had this year relative to high school track meets. So we are requesting to study this item.
Again, recommendation is to continue the study. Any other thoughts by our committee members? All right, let's continue. I think there's another track issue. Project.
This one isn't track related exactly, but it is just related to middle school sports in general. A proposal to allow middle school athletes to compete at the high school level if their middle school does not offer an activity. Just a quick rules update. We have some rules that allow kids to participate up, especially if they're over age. And then at the 1A level, if they don't, at the 1A level, if they don't have enough 7th graders, 8th graders, they can pull up 6th graders to participate. But anything that goes up into the high school level, if it's an 8th grader that's over age and goes up to the high school level, their 4-year rule kicks in. And that means they get 4 years. So if they start their freshman year, their 8th grade year, that means their senior year, they would not be able to participate. So we would recommend no action on this item.
And I could see where if you didn't have the 4-year rule, obviously you could have some people monkeying around with that, seeking to give kids more than 4 years, which is one of our cardinal principles that we've had for forever. But are there any other comments from folks, any of our committee members, smaller school members on that topic? Hearing none, continue, please.
Item L is a proposal to modify 1204 notation on the wrestling, almost said wrestling, oh my gosh, the wrestling flat fee schedule. If y'all recall, we had the wrestling schedule was updated and voted on and approved by the council and was effective for the 2019-20 school year. When we first released that wrestling fee schedule, there was some confusion on how to pay tournaments, etc., and they were all editorial. And basically, we just needed to have a little bit more explanation in that category for schools so that they could pay wrestling officials. So this one has been taken care of through edits, and we recommend no action.
So just to clarify, because we continue to appropriately take no action. This one did have action, but it was already rectified. So we appreciate whoever brought that forward, and it sounds as if it was warranted and corrected. Any comments by the committee on the topic of the wrestling fees? All right, continue, Susan.
Okay, item M, and everyone's heard this discussion at some point in time, but it's a proposal to modify the requirements to be a volunteer coach. We've had, over the past couple years, we've had these type, coaching requests come in, for us to review our rules or allow some flexibility. And where we haven't had an overwhelming amount of support for it, we know that this is something that we need to, continue to monitor and, and make sure that our rules fit the current scenarios, with some of the issues that schools face with coaching shortages. So our recommendation is to continue to monitor.
Any other comments from committee members? This topic, I will have to make the comment that I was a coach. I'm still a coach. It's a profession. While there can be folks that are well-meaning and good people that volunteer, still, I firmly believe in the profession and the fact that there's more to it than just wanting to coach, and the preparation that goes into it and the teaching, and that has always been connected in Texas, and I think wisely so. So I'm glad that we're continuing to look at that. I understand shortages, but I think we minimize our profession if we water it down such that we lessen the requirements. Those are my thoughts only. So Susan, if you'll continue.
Okay, item N through R are proposals to add and sanction a sport. And I'm going to read through the sports that they are requesting that we consider for sanctioning. Bowling, rugby, lacrosse, small-sided soccer, and boys volleyball. And, you know, for all of the people that propose these items, you know, I'm going to reinforce what we stated at the beginning of this. I know that you had intended to come in front of the full council and, you know, make the request for this. But at this time, you know, given just kind of where we're at, you know, we encourage that you come in October, but, you know, for this committee, we recommend that we monitor these.
I've yet to see anybody that's not passionate when they come and speak about the sport that they so desire. Bridge, we've had folks come and speak about bridge, and older husband and wife, and they're quite passionate about it. And just for those that are listening that aren't aware, we do take due diligence on adding sports, and for good reason. But we did recently add water polo, and so it does occur. It happens. It was much discussion, good discussion, but for those that are listening, it occurs. But there are many hurdles to overcome, no pun intended, that I think are deserved because of the implications, ramifications. And we heard Kilgore talk about funding earlier, and funding for adding new sports. So the recommendation committee is to study these possible sports. Do I have any comments by the committee on any of these sports that are being proposed? Hearing none, will you please continue, Susan?
The next 6 proposals, starting with item S and ending with item X, are COVID-related proposals, and I'll touch on each one of them briefly. Some of them, and as everyone knows, you know, on this committee, you know, we don't move forward with any of our items unless we have the approval of both the TEA and the governor's strike force, and obviously Dr. Harrison's firsthand in all those conversations, and, you know, making sure that we're getting it right. And you know, and during this time, you know, there were a lot of uneasiness, and, you know, I think people just wanted to make sure that we were considering bringing sports back, or, you know, even for next year. There's some in here that they are saying that maybe we don't need to bring sports back, and then there's some in here that are just, you know, asking us to do summer strength and conditioning. So I'm going to read through these just to be respectful of the written proposals as they were provided. But you know, for these items, they're ones that we're going to continue to monitor for obvious reasons. But they are also not, you know, solely, you know, based on a UIL rule. Item S was to give coaches the ability to train athletes in the summer. I think we would all agree that we're there, and we've started that, and we're in week 2 of that. A proposal to continue athletics for the 2020-21 school year. A proposal to allow, well, that's probably from the prior school year and into next year. A proposal to allow schools to decide when to reopen their facilities. Again, that was a summer strength and conditioning piece. A proposal to only allow family to attend games in the fall. There's a lot of, you know, fear out there that we won't, you know, that no fans will be allowed. I can't say that would necessarily come from UIL. A proposal to not cancel non-contact sports. So that one's a little bit fearful that we're going to, cancel sports. And a proposal to suspend all sports for the 2021 school year. So, you know, again, with all due respect to these proposals, there's still a lot of decisions to be made, and a lot of informed decisions to be made, but we're not the sole decision maker in those decisions.
And I want to give, did somebody have a comment? I thought I heard. So Charles, do you mind speaking some to this? And I mean, these are well intended, but they're piecemeal, and certainly any safety plan that we have is going to have a much more macro view. And then the thing that's difficult is the dynamic aspect of this. I think the governor's speaking today as we speak, and so that's the other challenge ongoing, is to stay abreast of an ever-changing situation. So by us not acting, and certainly does not mean we're not cognizant of COVID-19 or safety. It's just we're choosing not to do it piecemeal. But Charles, do you have some comments in regards to that?
I do, Dr. Poole, and thank you. We have been acting since the very beginning. Suspending play and suspending activities was the first order of business. And then as we follow through, as you just mentioned, following the edicts given us from the governor's office, commissioners' directives on how to use school facilities and the restrictions on those school facilities that all of you who have enacted, and then National Federation rules and the National Sports Medicine Committee, our own Sports Medicine Committee. All those have come into play, and Dr. Harrison's done a really good job, as Susan mentioned, aggregating all that material and putting it into some sort of plan. So we have, as she's mentioned, numerous people who say, move forward. And that's what we want to do. We plan to move forward, but you have to follow all the things that are given to you from your government. And that's the number one thing. The other thing is that we have to do what's safe for our athletes. And so we've got to be careful, but at the same time, we don't want to be ridiculous. But some of these things have been suggested, we've already put into place. Others we are considering, and others it's just not time yet. So I believe we have a great plan. And again, Dr. Harrison worked with each of his event-driven divisions, and they have been working on a regular basis, almost daily Zoom calls, putting together plans to deal with our return to play. So this is the first step. We think that with strength and conditioning, that is the first step to us getting back to normal for the fall. And we will have a plan ready for the fall. So Dr. Harrison can pitch in if he wants to. He's probably worked on this more than anyone on our staff. And again, has done a great job. So Dr. Harrison, here's your chance.
Thank you, Dr. Brydup. I don't have much to add other than, as Dr. Brydup said, we are in very close contact with our state leaders, continually working on plans, as has previously been noted. The situation is very fluid, and circumstances and information changes. So we have to pivot regularly on our plans, but I promise everybody on this call and anybody listening, we are absolutely dedicated, as Dr. Brydup mentioned, to having seasons this year and getting plans out to schools in time to plan for those activities in an appropriate way, just as soon as we can. I'm hoping that we will have news on that relatively soon. So stay tuned. We're going to continue plugging away and getting these things ready to go.
So I want to commend Charles and Jamie because you don't hear us being neutral. What you hear is within reason, we want to get back to normal. And I do want to speak just quickly to something for what it's worth anecdotally. We had a bond election in Barbers Hill, and I think we were the only one in the state to have it. Now, there's a reason people didn't do it. It's not for the faint of heart, but in our community, we ended up with an 87% passing rate, and it was 2.5 times larger than the previous. And we had 2.5 times the turnout that we had in a non-pandemic election. And what we heard people say is, if I can go to Home Depot and I can go to Lowe's, then surely I can vote. And that was just the comment we heard. And we've got great support, but it's hard to get back to normal when people can't put their kids back in school. And so I think we all understand there's more to this than just competing on the field. This is, and I know our politicians and our leaders understand this too, but all of that being said, and just like our bond election, we've never planned something so meticulously. Curbside voting, absentee voting, you keep your stylus. I mean, we had many people say they never touched anything except the stylus. So it doesn't come without much preparation, but I want to commend staff. And again, Jamie mentioned people listening. My instincts from talking to staff, and certainly it's my feeling, is that if at all safely possible, we need to get back to kids competing and building their character and learning life traits that will carry them through the rest of their life. Any other comments from the committee? Because this is likely one of the most important things we're dealing with. We talked about a lot of rule changes, adding sports, etc. But again, this is totally unprecedented, and I think a lot of folks really want to know what is the desire. When are we going to get back, and what's the course going forward? So, committee members, any other thoughts on this topic? COVID-19 or anything related thereof? All right, hearing none. Susan, does that end no, we still got some, I just noticed. Continue, please.
Okay, so, and we have just 2 agenda items left, but there were 123 proposals related to this. Again, this is outside of UIL rule, and these came with the recommendations from TEA and with their work with the governor's strike force, and obviously, as we pointed out, Dr. Harrison's work as well. But there were 2, these are basically 2 proposals, and in a nutshell, when we were able to go back and do summer strength and conditioning, there are some limitations on what you can do in your indoor facilities, your ISD indoor facilities, and whether it's a gymnasium and the activities that can take place with the summer strength and conditioning and the skill development piece that are in place for athletes 7 through 12. So that means no non-school type stuff. And so the number one proposal that has come off of this is a proposal to allow swimming facilities to be opened up to club swimmers, because with that restriction, an ISD can have their own swimmers in there, but they can't open it up for club use. And then, with the social distancing restrictions, it also restricts them to only be able to swim 1 to a lane, which, as everyone can tell, those restrictions are going to ease over time. This will change. But, these are not UIL rules. They're recommendations made by TEA, and these will be things that we continue to monitor, and Dr. Harrison will continue to work firsthand with TEA on. So no action on this item.
Any other discussion on the recommendation of no action by the committee, or any other comments? Hearing none. Susan, I'll give it back to you.
Okay. Item 2 on your agenda, we do have one staff proposal. This was, I want to just kind of give you as brief of overview as I can. So, the full council approved the 1204 increase, the $5 increase for all team sport officials to take effect for the 2020-21 school year. As a result of that, there was a fee schedule that was intended for sub-varsity basketball that did not meet that $5 increase. It exceeded that. The Texas High School Athletic Directors Association had brought this forward to TASO and also to the Sports Officials Committee to ask them to review that. The Sports Officials Committee basically, and it would have been, it's essentially, and I'm kind of putting this in a nutshell, it would have made a sub-varsity official be paid by minutes in a quarter, and that has never occurred before. So it would be paid on a pay range of 6 minutes, 7 minutes, and 8 minutes. That would have made a sub-varsity game increase by $20 instead of the $5 that was approved. So it took it back to the Sports Officials Committee, and the Sports Officials Committee voted to make that a $5 increase and not pay by minutes in a quarter. Piggybacking on that, TASO had also requested that we look at increasing the scrimmage fees, essentially for football, volleyball, basketball, soccer, baseball, and softball. And they hadn't been increased, and those fees are paid directly to the chapter, and they send out a number of officials, and they officiate whatever game it is, and they ask for a $25 increase, and the Sports Officials Committee approved that. So in a nutshell, that's what the proposed amendment is, and we would obviously recommend that this item be approved.
All right. I do want to commend Andre Walker, Athletic Director for HISD. I know others have, but Andre called me, and when they noticed this issue that we needed to correct on the fees for under varsity games, it almost seemed to be dictating how long quarters should be. And I know that wasn't our intent. So thank you, Andre, and to the other ADs that noticed that. And thank you, staff, for making the desired needed corrections. So we'll need a motion to approve this. So I'll either hear comments or I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make that motion to approve, Dr. Poole.
Richard Kilgore makes the motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay.
James Brew.
I think James was second, and he's big enough that we're not going to argue with him. So we've got a motion and a second to.
That hurt too.
Big good way, muscular way, man. Come on now. Okay, we got a motion and a second. And as we heard Charles say, we hadn't had a chance to use this because we've had very few motions, but any discussion on these proposed changes? Hearing none, I would ask for a vote. All in favor, say aye or wave your hand, either one.
Aye.
And let's do like, sign, please say something since I don't see all of the screen if you do not approve of this motion. So I'm fairly certain it was unanimous, but I'm sure we've got staff watching that. There we go. So I believe that was unanimous. And man, Zoom meetings must be the answer. We just went through 140. We'd be there hours more. And I do hate the folks that are passionate about what they believe in. I know I speak for Charles and Jamie and Susan. I mean, we don't desire to limit participation. We're doing the best we can, as everyone is in these circumstances, because we know there's strong feelings about all of the proposals, and we pride ourselves. We get chastised for being, well, I'm long-winded, obviously, but our meeting's going too long. But primarily it's because we don't want to shortchange anybody that takes the time to have a proposal. So with that being said, Susan, that concludes staff proposals. Are there any other announcements?
Mr. Chair, there are a couple, if you don't mind. First of all, our Legislative Council will meet in its entirety tomorrow at 11 a.m. by Zoom. So we will have some reports for you and what we're doing as we move forward, and some updates from the resolution that you passed in May, giving me and the staff some authority to modify some rules. We want to report that out to you. And we just want to have a little discussion about things. And so I'll do that tomorrow. We do have a council member who has retired and will be moving to greener pastures, and he's already doing that, I believe. Jim Waller, I want to recognize him. I don't want to do it by Zoom. So I have asked him if he would come back in October so we can do that. And Greg is the athletic chair. I would like you to say some words about him in October. Provided we can meet live, I'm going to ask Jim to come back. He served for 12 years, and he's always been on the athletic committee. This is his last action, and I appreciate him being here today. We've asked Robert Dillard to be appointed, and our chairman Curtis Rhodes has approved that appointment. And Robert sat in on the meeting today. He did not vote, but he will be taking Jim's place beginning after tomorrow's meeting, and he will be the voting member in October. So that's how that will work. If you're curious, appreciate all of you again. Covered a lot of items in about an hour, but again, we didn't rush. Everyone's items are still alive. That's the beautiful thing about it. We didn't reject one thing today. Every item that has been presented will be brought back before the October athletic committee and the full council. So I think that's a beautiful thing, and it's a way that people can be assured that their voices have been heard. We don't agree with everything. Our staff don't always agree with what the council does. And that's the great thing about it. And you know what? The council doesn't always agree with what the staff does, but we work together to do what's best for the students in this state. And I'm so proud of our collaboration and our work through the years, and looking forward to tomorrow's meeting.
A couple of comments. There's not many green pastures in Idalou, but we'll be glad to, I'll certainly be glad to say words about Jim. Jim's done a tremendous job. And I know this, his heart is in our business, and it will continue to be. And we're glad to get the Littlefield Fighting Wildcats represented. Look forward to having his representation as we move forward. So I believe where we're at is that tomorrow at 11, and I do want to make one other comment. Charles mentioned this. If anyone's wondering, do we occasionally reject proposals? Every meeting I've ever been a part of, we have rejected proposals. So when he says we kept everything alive, there is significance to that. And we're doing so out of courtesy because of the inability for people to be here in public. So if you're curious, yes, we've rejected every time we have meetings, things that we see fit that people make motions to do so. So that change was out of sensitivity to the COVID-19 inability for people to be here present in person. So anything else, Susan?
No, I think everything was covered. Jim Waller, you've been awesome, and we're going to miss you. I know we're going to honor you in a different way, but just appreciate your service on this committee and your friendship.
And I'm sure Jim's not commenting because they don't have Zoom in Idalou, but hopefully somebody will tell him. With that, I don't even remember.
Good job, Greg.
Thank you. Thank you. He was listening. So I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved by Curtis, seconded by
Moved by Jim Waller.
Give it to Jim.
Waller. He got on the record. There we go.
I'll second it.
I think it was moved by Jim Waller, seconded by Curtis, if y'all got that straight. Any discussion? I assume not. All in favor of adjourning, wave your hand, and we'll check back in. We are officially adjourned at, which I didn't say the time when we started. I'll get better tomorrow, I promise, at 2 o'clock, right on the dot. So we adjourn at 2 o'clock. Thank you to the hundreds that listened in, and we'll take this back up tomorrow. Meeting adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Great
Good
job.
job.
Thanks, Greg.
Thanks, everybody.